Welcome. I'd like to call to order the Cumberland School Committee meeting today, Thursday, October 26th, 2017, and ask that you please stand at 7 o'clock, and ask that you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, bear with me 1 minute. I just want to grab some throat lozenges. Fighting a little bit of a sore throat. Welcome. Thank you for attending. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Pleasure of the committee. Mr. Denon makes a motion to approve. Second by Mr. Hess. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Approval of minutes, regular meeting 10/12/2017, and the approval of minutes for executive session 10/12/2017. Pleasure of the committee. Mr. DeMonica and Mrs. Friedman make a motion to approve. Do I have a second by Mr. Denon? All in favor? Ayes have it, 7-0. Mr. Chandler, is this microphone working okay? You can. Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I always like compliments. Appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is the report out of executive session meeting. Report out of executive session meeting 10/26/2017 this evening. Report out of executive session. There were no votes. And there was a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. Pleasure of the committee. Mr. Denon makes a motion to seal the minutes. A second by Mr. Fiorillo. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Mitchell.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you could join me down at the podium, I'd appreciate it, please. The excitement is building. Well, good evening once again, everyone. We wanted to just take a moment to really do a special recognition. Standing to my left, and forgive me, school committee members, for having my back to you. I apologize. Standing to my left, in between the chair of the school committee and myself, is Gail Norton. And the reason that she's here this evening is because I believe the date was October 11th. Gail is a school lunch monitor at Community Elementary School. And on that particular day, a student started to choke, a fifth grade student started to choke on I believe a plastic bottle cap. As you can imagine, that's a pretty scary thing to have happen. It's an awful thing to see. And Gail responded very quickly. She performed the Heimlich maneuver on this student and was able to dislodge the object from his throat. So we thought it was appropriate that we recognize her for what she did. So we have this certificate, and this is what it says. The Cumberland School Department presents this certificate of appreciation to Gail Norton in recognition of your quick response to help a student in need. So on behalf of the school committee and certainly the family of this student, we want to thank you for your quick action.
besides having my children and meeting my husband. This was an amazing day. I still shake when I think about it. But Nate, oh, sorry, this child gave me the signal that I needed. So he is also a hero. He did what he needed to do, and he put his hands up around his neck and let me know that he needed help. So I did what I needed to do, and I'm glad. And thank you for the recognition. It's hard for me to be the center of attention. So anyways, thank you very much.
I have just a few other things, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes,
would also like to say that I don't believe these other things measure up quite to what we just recognized. I just wanted to mention that October is National Principal Appreciation Month, and I just felt it was really important to recognize the work that is done by the administrators, not only in the town of Cumberland, but administrators everywhere in the state of Rhode Island and across the country, but especially in the town of Cumberland. You know, being a teacher and an administrator it's one of those things that I think you really have to be in the role to truly appreciate how challenging it is. I think it's really hard to be a good teacher, and I think it's really hard to be a good administrator. As you all know, school committee knows, especially because you are dealing with all of us on a regular basis. So I think you have a really good understanding of how important it is to have a strong leader in every building. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the work of our principals in Cumberland and publicly thank them for the tremendous amount of work that they are responsible for doing and the varied responsibilities that they have in their roles. And I just wanted to publicly thank them for their service to the students in the town of Cumberland. So I just thought that that was appropriate given the fact that it is National Principal Appreciation Month. I also wanted to give an update on the National Blue Ribbon School Award that will be taking place a week from tomorrow at Community School. As was previously mentioned, Community is one of 3 schools in the state of Rhode Island. In the school has been acknowledged as being one of the best schools in the country. I think there are, as I mentioned the last time that we met, there are approximately 100,000 schools in the country, and 342 schools were recognized as Blue Ribbon schools. So that alone is really impressive. And, Community is in a position to say we are one of the best schools in the country. So we will be recognizing Community School for the fine work that they are doing and have done over the years. It is a very special recognition, and we want to make sure that that day is special. It is scheduled for 9:30. You all hopefully should have received an invitation. If you haven't, you will be getting one soon. We know that the time of day is difficult for folks, but we hope that you will be able to attend. We are inviting a number of dignitaries and have a really special day planned for Community School, which they have clearly earned. So I'll keep you updated. There'll probably be some more information to pass along. We have met, Mrs. Vaughn and others of us have met, and we have to have a contingency plan. We're hoping that the weather will be will be cooperative enough for us to be able to do it outside where everyone can participate in the celebration. And we also have a plan to move it inside into the gymnasium if we have to. And the only issue with that is that the number of people who can attend is limited because of fire code and a limit on the number of people that can be in the gymnasium where it would be held. But we have a contingency plan for that so that everyone can be a part of that celebration. And last but not least, I just wanted to mention that the district has made a real commitment to safety, and I think everyone knows that the safety of our students and staff are our number one priority. We work really hard at doing all of the drills that we're supposed to complete as part of our responsibility to meet the regulations around drills like shelter in place, evacuation, and the traditional fire drills that we are required to do. And one notable thing that happened recently, a number of us attended a FEMA course. It was an actual course. Mike Chandler, our IT director, Jay Masterson, Dr. Jason Masterson, the principal of McCourt Middle School, and the chair of the District Safety Committee, Nydia Carbonic, the principal of Ashton School, and myself attended this course, day-long course where we actually were tested in the whole bit. And the thing that was reassuring for me, and it's always good to sit through a day-long course like that because, you know, I think it's important to stay current and review the things that are critically important to ensuring everyone's safety. And the thing that was reassuring to me was the fact that we are in a good place in the district because we take the work of keeping everyone safe very seriously, and our safety plans, which are required for every one of our buildings, are aligned with the guidelines for FEMA. So, in fact, one of the things that you'll be voting on this evening is approving the safety plan for each of our schools in the district. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Excellent update. And congrats to everyone on there, the National Principal Association Month, but also importantly to saving somebody's life. I'm just getting over the goosebumps. So thank you. It's nice to have talented people like yourself involved in day-to-day activity that's, you know, aware of situations. So thank you again. Next item on the agenda is the chairperson's report. I would like to recognize Town Councilor Lisa Bolio in the audience, and also State Rep Jimmy McLaughlin in the back over there. Welcome to our meeting. Committee on Educational Funding and Development update. This is a committee that was established by the Town Council that currently has two of our school committee members on that board. I'm going to ask Mr. Denon to give an update. Mr. Denon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is it called again? The Committee on Educational Funding and Development met for the first time last night, and Mr. Hess and I are the school committee members on the committee, and Mr. Prignano is the superintendent's appointee. So we met for the first time last night, and it was the organizational meeting, and we chose our leader of the committee. The committee will be chaired by Jeff Mutter, and the vice chair is Tom Kane, and the secretary or the clerk is Mr. Hess. It's not an easy task to do any one of those positions, so I just want to say I appreciate the extra effort that they're putting in. So last night we talked about basic things that the committee is going to try to do. We have a charge of coming up with recommendations by April 1st. It's on or before, so we're hoping to do it before, but that's the drop dead date. We talked a lot about sort of general areas that we'd like to dive into as part of the committee process. In 2 weeks, we expect to have reports from the town finance director and Mr. Prignano about 5-year plans. So this is something that we're all familiar with. They're updated frequently, but we're going to get the presentation on sort of the state of things now and as we see them in the future. As Mr. Mutter said, we need to identify the problem first and agree on the basic facts, because if we can't agree on the facts, we won't be successful. So that'll happen in 2 weeks. So our plan is to meet every other Wednesday in the monastery, in the Hayden Center, and that meeting will be 2 weeks from yesterday. And everyone's open. These are open meetings. The more the merrier. We may need a bigger room because there are 11 members on the committee. But I would invite you to attend if you can, because I think they'll be interesting. That's about it. Mr. Hess, do you have anything to add? Okay. 6:30. 6:30 Wednesdays of the week we have school committee meetings, if you think of it that way.
Mr. Denon, thank you for the update. We're going to keep this rolling on the agenda, and after that committee meets, we'll have you give the update every time. So, thank you. And I was a little surprised to hear that Mr. Hess is the secretary, right? We asked him to be the secretary, and he refused it like immediately. So, just kidding. Next, next item on the agenda is fiscal year 2018 budget update. There's nothing to report at this time. Probably in the next couple of weeks, as we're moving forward, we'll have some more information on there with some good content. Next item on the agenda is the reports of standing committees, payment of bills. Mr. DeMonica.
Mr. Chairman, there were no payment of bills this time around.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item is fiscal management subcommittee update. Mr. DeMonica.
Fiscal did not have a meeting this week, but we're still on track budget-wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item is policy and procedures subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorillo.
Policy and procedures also did not meet this week, although there is continuing work on some draft policies that'll be brought up in the next next meeting in 2 weeks.
Like banker's hours over here with this. Next item on the agenda, achievement and communications subcommittee update. Mr. Denon, make me proud.
I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but we did not meet this past week. We look forward to meeting in 2 weeks.
We need a new chair of this committee. I don't know. Just kidding. Thank you, Mr. Denon. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Would anybody like to step up to the podium and speak your mind or any questions or concerns? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda, public hearing, reading of new policy, second reading. Mr. Fiorillo.
This is the I-9 internet filtering policy, which we are required by law to have. We had the first reading a couple weeks ago, and I would ask that the second reading take place right now, and we will be voting on this later.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorillo. At this time, I'd like to open up public comment in regards to the I-9 internet filtering policy. Please step up to the microphone if you have any any concerns or anything you'd like to say. Hearing none, we'll call that closed. Next item on the agenda is old business. But before I take this, if the committee would not mind, you know what? We'll keep it. We'll keep it in order. I apologize. All right. Next item on the agenda is old business update with Durham School services on bus routes and schedules. Discussion and or vote to approve the 2017-2018 bus schedules. Mr. Neves, could you come up to the microphone? Welcome. Mr. Neves, we had some concerns with some routes. If you would like to give an update in regards to specific schools and bus numbers, and then we're going to see if the committee has any questions for you. Sure. No, take your time.
One of the issues we had was that community on bus 26, as we did reverse that run. It's working very well. Haven't actually had any comments. I've spoken to the driver quite a bit about what's happening with that run, and the driver says it's running well. I believe it's been working. So bus 26 seems to have worked its way out with the reversing of the run in the PM. Bus 19 was another issue that we had at Ashton School. This week, 1 minute. This week, we decided that we had made a decision that there had to be another move made. Just what we were doing was not working. On Monday, and we notified parents on Friday through the emailing through Ashton School that there would be a time change for the Ashton 19 pickup, and we moved it up 12 minutes. We took an additional bus to do just the Ashton part, so it's actually not 19 that's doing it, it's a bus 303 that's doing it. It has worked tremendously. 19 was probably averaging 8:57, 8:58 to get into Ashton School. The first day we used the 303 bus with a new driver on it. He had done a dry run, of course, but he came in around 8:57. By the second day, he was down to 8:48, and he stayed at the 8:48 time right now. And we even believe that he may be able to get a little bit more time off of that. So we feel 19 is working out very well right now. 39 was an issue at Ashton coming in late. We've made some changes which also became effective on Monday. That seemed to be working very well with 39 also getting in the afternoon, not the AM, arriving at Ashton probably in the range of I think it was 341 today. We'd like to get a little bit more time on that, but I think that's going to work its way out. One of the issues, and I think everybody knows what the issues are, Mendon Road is just clogged. I mean, my bus, the new driver on 19 actually told me, he says, if I didn't have the traffic at the 295 overpass, trying to get into Ashton in the morning, he probably could cut another 5 to 6 minutes off of.
Mr. Neves, which bus was this?
That's the bus 19 one. It's 303 that's running that run now. We've taken a bus that was not doing Cumberland, put it into that last tier just to help out, and we did that once again.
At the bus, I was told a letter went out, and now they're leaving 12 minutes early.
The email went out,
Okay,
and we are earlier 12 minutes at the stops than what we were doing.
and that took effect on Monday, correct?
Took effect on
I
Monday.
just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
That one took effect on Monday, yes. So all in all, I think the runs have really tweaked themselves out a lot. There's always going to be tweaks. We received numerous emails from administration with new students coming in. This year, it's been a very high level of shelter students. And a shelter student is if someone gets burnt out of a home. According to the laws in the state of Rhode Island, the local district has to provide one way. So in other words, if a child was lived in a house in Cumberland, there was a fire in the house, and they were moved out of that house and moved to Warwick, the Cumberland School Department would have to pay for busing from Warwick to Cumberland one way, and Warwick would pick the other side, either AM or PM, either side. Regrettably, and there's a lot of other issues besides fires that come in effect for that same issue. Regrettably, this year we've probably got the most I've seen in Cumberland doing that. We've probably got approximately 7 right now that are living on the outskirts of Cumberland, coming into Cumberland. So that puts a little bit of a burden on the Cumberland buses also that are running. A lot of times, one of our other contracted buses for other contracts are able to provide that service, but there are times that we need to use the Cumberland run. And out of district students, even inside the town, those are increasing all the time too. I mean, if a child moves in, as you guys know, the enrollments of the schools, if they move into the community area and there's no room for that class, for that child, they're going to Cumberland Hill, they're going to BF, they're going to Ashton. So that adds a burden also trying to get those children to the schools on time. So basically that's what we've been going through. I think we've fixed what we needed to fix. There's always going to be tweaks. I get calls at least once a week from the police department going out and checking things out with them. Traffic officer from the police department has been fabulous. He's always very responsive to what we think and what we usually come to an agreement. Not saying we agree all the time on everything, but most of the time we do agree what needs to be done.
Mr. Neves, bus 26
Yes,
the reservoir? How are we making out? How are you making out? on
that's the one that I spoke to originally, 26 at Community. Reversing that run seems to have helped.
that? I apologize. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Any other
No,
questions?
no parent complaints. Looks good. We're gonna
Not
keep it
heard.
status quo.
We have not heard any comments about 26. The only comments I'm hearing from 26 is when I go to the bus driver and say, how's it going? How's the run going? Are you hearing anything from the parents at the stops? There's nothing happening.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Fiorillo?
Paul, was a bus changed on Monday at BF Norton during the day?
There was a bus change that involved the 39 move for Ashton. We had to take a couple stops off of 39 and put them on another bus and put a couple stops onto 39. But it took, instead of taking 39 up to the northern end of, well, excuse me, the
Okay,
southern end.
that's fine. But when were the when did the change actually take place?
Change took effect on Monday. The parents were notified on, they were started to receive calls on Thursday from our office because there were only, I think approximately there were 15.
Okay, because there were several of my neighbors actually who say that they were never notified.
Well, I actually heard the calls going out. I was sitting right there when the people were making the calls and leaving messages. So there may have been times when when the numbers were not valid that we received. What we did was we did send what we had the computer, what the children that are at that stop, we did send those to the school for the changes. What happened on Monday afternoon was the system sends students to the closest stop, okay? But there are stops that could be very in the vicinity that may be more convenient for a parent. So we found that there were about 3 or 4, I believe, students that were at I believe the High and Waterman stop was one of the big concerns, or High and McGill, I'm not exactly sure, but it was that stop on High Street that we weren't of knowledge that they were at that stop. So those people did not get notified because some of those students were going to the Curran Road and Howe stop, or that's where the computer would have put them. So when we do a change like this, we go into the computer, we print out the students that are listed for those stops, and those are the students' parents and the students' names that we send to the school.
Well, I got news for you then. Your computer's wrong because there's no reason for these parents that live next door to me to be sending their kids over to House Street instead of the top of our own street. It's much closer and not to mention much safer to walk. I don't understand how I've heard 3 parents who have had children in the school system for years now and have used the bus service that say they never received a call, and I tend to believe them. Is it possible that they were called, there were no message, nobody got in touch with an actual parent or even an answering machine, and they were just never called back?
I can tell you the calls that were made while I was in the office, which were most of those calls made by someone else besides me. I was not making the actual calls.
Yeah.
I was overhearing, and they were leaving messages on message machines if the people were not there. That much I can tell you, and I do apologize for any disruption in that.
Okay. Mr. Neves, why was the route changed?
That was changed to help out with bus 39 getting to Ashton.
Paul, how many special education buses do we currently have?
We have 8 special education buses in the town to cover the town.
And each of those buses have certified aides on them?
Yes, those are Durham aides, not school department.
Okay. Can you please send the certifications to the administration? I just want to make sure that all their certifications are up to date because I'm hearing some horrible stories about reactions of aides when things are not happening
I
on the
can
bus.
definitely do that. I can do that by Monday.
And also, do you know why the decision was made to have the high school late bus at, what is it, 2:40 or 2:35?
It's always been at 2:40.
And it's always been at 2:40?
That's always been the time. I mean, it
Was
might
this
have
going
gone-
back to, wait, was this going back though before the start, the end time of the high school was moved forward again a few years ago by Dr. Thornton?
Probably was going back before the. At some point in time, it was 2:45. Then it was moved back to 2:40.
Okay.
It's been the 2:45, 2:40 time.
How much of a, problem would it create to move that bus later? I'm not sure what later would be, but let's just say for the sake of argument, 3 o'clock.
That probably would create a big problem.
Okay.
The reason being, right now, those late buses themselves, we are using another contract buses to cover them before they go and do their other contract. And
What does that mean? What are they, Blackstone Valley prep buses?
Blackstone Valley Prep or Providence Memorial.
Okay.
One of those two contracts are actually doing late buses.
Okay.
Because Cumberland's buses would not be able to do it. We just can't fit them into the schedule.
I have a question about the high school late bus. Mr. Fiola looked at me because I went to Cumberland High and it was a 5 o'clock late bus. So,
There was probably a 5
yeah,
o'clock.
So, so it just begs the question: school gets out at like 2,
Mhm.
and the late bus is 2:40. So it's not a late bus; it's kind of late, or it's a little late. The later bus.
It's a later bus.
Most importantly, are there kids riding it?
Yes.
And is it like I wonder, to Mr. Fiola's point, if we made it later, would it be more convenient for more kids and have fewer parents have to come pick up their kids? Like I don't know who's staying after just a half hour.
It
Like-
definitely would probably be more convenient for more students. I think if you looked at a 3:30 time for the late bus, which I know it's a little over an hour that they'd be there, almost an hour and a half actually, after dismissal, I think that would work better for transportation purposes. It would work better.
Yeah, I guess. And it's a question for Mr. Mitchell. Who decides what time the late bus picks up? Do you know how that's determined? Like who picked 2:40?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So I guess can we look at that?
We can definitely set up a meeting with the administration at the high school with administration, of course, and see whether there's a better fit to the
And-
bus.
So I have another question about, I know the next item on the agenda is discussion and a vote about the bus routes, but we haven't received the bus routes that you're talking about. The changes to bus 26 and bus 3319, like, right? I think some of them are so new, they just happened a couple days ago. Bus 26 happened a week or 2 weeks ago, I think. But I just checked the drive and it hasn't been updated. So I don't know, we should get a copy of those.
So the routes are, thank you, Mr. Dennett. The routes are approved by the police
Police
traffic.
department, correct. Yes.
Mr. Adams, could you weigh in on this? Oh, sorry, Mr. Adams. Discussion and a vote to approve the 2017-2018 school bus routes, but yet they haven't been updated to us. Could we still vote on them, or should we?
I hate to put it in this terms, but I that's up to you guys. If you aren't
Okay.
comfortable
I'll make a
voting
motion to table for
without-
2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Hess, go ahead.
Mr. Neves, at this point, do we have any buses that are consistently arriving to school late?
My knowledge is not. There may be, excuse me, I've got to correct that. There may be one minibus that may be arriving a little bit late at JJ John McLaughlin due to an additional child that we do not have another bus up in the Mercy Mount area for Cumberland Hill. There's a child that's moved in there that needs transportation. So we needed to put that child on a minibus. That bus, last time I haven't been checking it daily late yet. Recently, last week I checked it. And I think it might have been 901, 902 a couple of times. But that's the only bus that I know of that's arriving consistently late. Well, not consistently, but late.
Okay. I'll preface this by saying I appreciate the efforts that you and Durham have put in to try and address the issues that we've had.
Mhm.
But from my standpoint, we're 8 or 9 weeks into the school year, and the fact that it's taken this long to get to the point where we have addressed buses arriving late is problematic. And this is at least the second year in a row where we've had issues like this. And I appreciate Mendon is a busy road. It's been a busy road for decades. It's not any longer than it's ever been. The population of the town hasn't changed dramatically, and traffic is traffic. I can't arrive late to work consistently every day and blame the train or traffic. So if there are issues related to traffic that are causing us not to be able to deliver students to school on time, then we need to know about that. Now, I know you've said pretty consistently that we have enough buses, but if the kids aren't getting to school on time without some sort of Herculean efforts on your part, then there's some information that needs to be shared so that we understand how to get the kids to school on time, because we're not going to change the traffic patterns on Mendon Road. It's only going to get worse. Diamond Hill is going to become a nightmare for the next few years. So I understand traffic, I appreciate it, but it's not an excuse for the students not getting to school on time. We need the information in order to make sure that that happens on a consistent basis, and it doesn't take 2 months into the school year before that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. All right, Mr. Fiorillo has a motion on the table to table the 2017-2018 school bus routes. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Neves. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Mr. Neves, could you please make sure the school bus routes get over ASAP? All right, excellent. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, new business. Vote to approve updated school safety plan. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. I would recommend approval of the updated school safety plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. This was something that was discussed with the committee in our executive session. Pleasure of the committee. Mr. Hess makes a motion to approve the updated school safety plan. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Friedman. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, who's been waiting very patiently, is an update from board member of Town Charters Review Commission, Mr. Rick Bolio. Come on up to the podium. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you for showing up to our request. We appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity to update everybody on our activities so far. So the school committee asked me to represent them on the Cumberland Charter Review Commission, and I just thought I'd take a second to sort of bring everybody up to speed on what that is. Every 10 years, the town is required to update and go through their charter to make sure that things are updated. And the last time it was done in 2010, I actually served on that particular update commission as well. Each of the town councilors have a person that they can appoint. So there's 7 folks that are appointed by the council. There's 1 appointed by the mayor and 1 by the school committee for a total of 9. We are meeting on the second Monday every month for the past 5 or 6 months. We meet at the Hayden section of the library in room 2, which is plenty big enough, just as a recommendation. And that typically is from 7 to 9 p.m. unless there's some sort of conflict on a Monday, and we get pushed to a Tuesday. So far, we've had a quorum for every meeting, so it's been moving along nicely. And it really is up to the commission to decide exactly how they're going to go through this. And our chairman, Dave Shinnebear, was elected the first night. I was elected as vice chair, and we have Bruce Lemoy as secretary, and then there's another 6 members. We've been going through each and every section and really sort of reading it to ourselves, and then deciding if there's certain elements in there that either concern us, whether it's due to some recent events that we may have heard or seen in the newspaper or what have you. So we've been going through each and then identifying ones that we want to come back to, just to keep it moving along. And we review it for consistency with other sections. So there's some topics that I'll mention in a minute on that. And occasionally we've asked for information from the town clerk to go out and solicit the other towns as to what they might be doing or how they might be handling certain things. So far, some of the areas of interest have been term length for our various elected officials, as well as term limits for our elected officials. We have talked about the consistency and clarity and having more unambiguous requirements in terms of the mayoral appointments for the various department heads that the mayor has the pleasure of appointing upon re-election or election. And we want to make that more clear because of some of the recent churn that's occurred there. Qualifications for a lot of the appointed positions, some are very prescriptive and have, quite a bit of chapter and verse in terms of what the qualifications. Others have virtually nothing. And so there's some things there that I think we can tighten up. And then we've seen a lot of cleanup and typos and outdated sessions where there's been, articles in there that relate to the initial couple years of a charter and how that sort of gets, blended in with various elected officials. And at this point, they're obsolete because we've gone through that process already. Part of what's come up is the realization that there could be quite a few things that get addressed, and the amount of information there to address, and then be able to not only present it to our town council, but also to the general public for their interpretation and digestion and potential vote. There's definitely some different schools of thought on the commission. One of the ways that we've been talking about recently is perhaps we organize these changes into categories as opposed to hitting each section and describing what we're trying to change there. So for instance, the mayoral appointments, that happens in many sections throughout the town's charter. We group those together, explain it once, and really say that it just hits these 10 sections as a way to communicate what we're trying to do in a succinct way, but it also helps in terms of describing that to the general public as well. There's also, in terms of these possible groupings, removal of all the old and outdated sections and really talk about those and the reasons for that. Correction of typos and various other little housekeeping that really don't warrant a lot of thought, but should be in there as opposed to not addressing them when in fact this is the time to do it. And then we also suggested or are planning to suggest that there's a definitions section. There's certain terms that are used that are subject to really legal interpretation, and it would be good to have those sort of well defined at the front end so that we're not always having to scratch our heads and say, well, from a layperson's perspective, we think it means this, but legally in this context, it means something else. So we thought that would be helpful for future interpretation of the charter. And lastly, there's the potential for new sections that should be added based on what's happening in town or in our society generally. And we have not talked about what some new sections might be. I know I've had some input from the school committee on possible additions there, and we haven't got to that yet. But when we do, I will present those in a comprehensive way to our commission. The next steps that we would really then do are organize these topics into areas that impact, let's say, either police, fire, mayoral departments, or school committee, et cetera, and invite interested parties to discuss that particular issue. It'll be like the topic du jour, literally for a particular meeting, and we would have folks come in, and of course the general public is invited also to run through, hear people's concerns that they might have or reasons for advocacy, et cetera, on various topics, so that we get as much input from the various parties as we can possibly do. And that would then provide that sort of complete fodder for really thinking about how it should change and have our appropriate rationale to go with it, so that when we do make these recommendations, they're clear and concise and have had all the input that we can provide. That really is one final thing that I felt was not handled as well as it could have been last time, is that once we have all these changes, is really to educate the general public about what they are. And that means like taking out an ad in the newspaper and really describe each one of these things, because they can be very dry and without context as to why something might be changed. A layperson who is not really paying attention to how many times the town council meets in a year, for instance, they get an appreciation for, why the recommendation might be there to, have more or have less or what have you, just as an example. So that's something that I've been trying to push the whole time. So definitely a work in progress, and there's a lot more to come. But so far, the commission has been operating pretty well. Any questions
Excellent.
for me?
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Denon?
Thank you. Have you guys talked about budget process and any possible changes to that section?
The short answer is no. We have talked about various fiscal pieces that, because of just inflation from, days of yore, there's some elements that probably need to be added to change some of the limits that, when things kick in or people have to do certain things. Last time there was a change made to when the school committee had to submit their budget with an appropriate timing. And a lot of those things are very particular in terms of the cascade of events that has to happen to allow the appropriate prescribed time deltas between when Group A submits to and Group B revises, and et cetera, et cetera. So we made changes last time to help provide more time, I think, for the school budget to be reviewed, et cetera. Last time we changed the charter. But if there are things that you think we need to adjust that would help the process, then I'm all ears.
Yeah, I just know the whole process is prescribed in the charter, so now's the time to change it if we want to change it.
Precisely, yes.
Mr. Balea, how far into the charter are you guys already?
We have actually gone through all of the sections. We finished it at our last meeting. So now it really is all about compiling and grouping the various comments that we've had throughout, come up with appropriate language for things that we're looking to change or tweak. But there still is that unfinished business category of if we're going to add something new, what is it? What's the rationale? And frankly, I think that'll be a difficult thing because minor changes are done with care because you really have to look at the long-term consequences of a change. It might make sense with the group of people you have in front of you today, but what if that group was constituted differently? And you have to really reflect on that and whether or not it makes sense to have that happen. So that's the type of care that goes into making the changes that are considered now in an existing language. But for a brand new section involving something, that's definitely going to be a little bit more of a challenge to sort of get everybody rallied around, and obviously there has to be good reason for it.
In regards to legal questions that committee has, who are they being proposed to?
Right now, they're going to the town solicitor.
I'm just kind of curious. So that has been good input going in?
There's only been a few things that we've sought clarity on, and there's been definitely some, I'll say, difference of opinion in terms of what's come back. And those topics aren't, I'm not considering them, done. There's a clause relative to the wording of how a charter is adopted and how a charter is revised. And, my interpretation as a layperson, admittedly, is that, this commission is formed by, people from, that live in town. I've been in town 25 years now. People who live in town that are not on any sort of elected official, body whatsoever. So these are, kind of lay people from the town. And if you read the various articles of constituting the charter within Rhode Island state law, et cetera, this group of folks are to provide, these changes or this town charter to the committee, the town council of the town, and for them to facilitate the implementation of these things. So from my perspective, there's no real ability other than to make sure that legally we're not saying something incorrectly. But other than that, they're really to push it and get it onto the ballot for the general population. That's my opinion. Historically, it hasn't been handled that way. It's subject to their review and approval and decision of whether or not that's a worthy change or not. And to me, that's my personal opinion on that is that it's not. that's not the way what was intended.
I do have one more question. Excuse me. Has there been any point of contention in regards to any school language listed in the charter that has been come up to review on that committee?
There has been, just for everyone's benefit, last time there was a topic where there was an issue relative to absenteeism by a school committee member. And in an attempt to rectify that, there was language that was put in to make it more clear that it was not just you had to be there for a certain number of consecutive meetings, but you couldn't miss a certain amount for the entire year. So that put the kibosh on, showing up or being absent for 3 and then showing up for 1 and then being absent for 3 and showing up for 1, because at that point you could get away with that. And as you know, there's lots of work that has to be done that requires, an appropriate majority, et cetera. So we took steps to make changes last time, and I don't know if the intent got lost when it was actually implemented in the charter, but there is 2 sections that are somewhat conflicting right now, and that would be cleaned up. And that's something that, I need to put into an appropriate form to talk to you folks about and making sure that we're wording that correctly. So it's not looked at as any sort of major issue. It's more of like one of those typo, unintended consequence categories that we want to make consistent.
Excellent. And how many meetings does this committee have left?
Last time we did this, there was an urgency to get it done because it had not been done in a timely manner, and we had a deadline to meet. In this case, it was constituted well early in this whole process. The intention is to have everything before the town council so that for the next upcoming elections, things can be submitted to the state and have everything, put accordingly on ballots, et cetera. But we are doing this kind of preemptively after only 7 years, so we're not at the 10-year deadline. So if there was, for some reason, we had a lot of things to discuss and review and it took another year, that's okay. But the intent would be to try to get this done in the April-May timeframe, which is pretty solid. That would have given us a full 12 months. And we all agreed as commissioners that if we needed to meet longer or more often than once a month to really drive this home, we would do so. So far, that hasn't been the case, but I can see where we have some of these particular topics du jour, as I call them. There might be a series of meetings that happen more frequently than once a month.
Excellent. Mr. Hess?
Mr. Bolio, relative to your experience at the last review, how significant or how numerous are the changes that you think would come out of this one?
Last time there was definitely a number of changes that were being made for good reasons, like the one I had mentioned earlier. There was also some desire, because obviously the folks that appoint members like myself to this group, they have particular things that they might be looking for or particular things that they don't want to see occur. So there's always some healthy debate, but ultimately it'll be the majority of the committee that moves things forward. But in terms of quantity, I would say that this has the potential for having more, because if we do see merit in the new sections and some topics there, that would certainly be, I would say, kind of like a bit of heavy lifting for this particular commission to get through. But also, if we organize the way I discussed earlier, where we're kind of taking care of the typos with a big broad brush, those would be a lot more numerous changes than we have suffered previously because of the unwillingness to really put too much in front of the voters at once.
Mr. DeMonica?
Mr. Bolio, I remember that last one. I think what happens is the mayor tries to drive some of the charter changes as well. The last mayor we had his agenda, and he had a town council that would approve his agenda versus today. And we just have to keep in mind that the town council can take everything or nothing, or just put their own in there and send it to the state for approval. And once the state approves it, goes onto our budget. So, I mean, onto our ballot for the next election. So it's all, even though we do work, I served as chairman as the last one. We do all this work and the town council can decide what they want to do. And I agree with Mr. Bolio. If you're gonna have a commission sit there and make these recommendations, we should be allowed to vote on them. That's why we have, these citizens sitting there and doing it. Thank you.
I get to attend a Charter Review Commission meeting, and I have to say that I am impressed, and I'm glad that this committee chose you to represent the schools. It seems like there's a good synergy between all the members of that committee as well.
Yeah, there's been a core group of folks that have shown up to constitute a quorum. So there's definitely some folks that have perfect attendance. And then there's been some folks that have been more occasional or have missed one or something like that. The intentions seem to be good and for the benefit of the town. I've really found that sometimes you can certainly anticipate a certain amount of discord going into these things because of the different factions and what they might be pushing. But so far, it's been pretty congenial and cooperative.
Excellent. Mr. Bolio, thank you for representing us.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Next item on the agenda, excuse me, Rhode Island College Partnership Grant, Improving Educator Quality in Elementary Mathematics Partnership. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We actually have some really good news to share with all of you this evening. Mr. Damana has established a really good working relationship with Rhode Island College. And as a result of that working relationship, which I believe has gone on for several years, he has a few folks that he has collaborated with over the years, and they have been able to apply for and get a rather sizable grant. And is it okay if I share how much? The grant totals $201,000. So Mr. Damana and I believe Ann Goudreau and Donna Christie are here this evening, and I know that Tony has a brief presentation that he would like to share with all of you that outlines the plan to utilize this money. And I know that I have talked before about one of the tenets of our strategic plan is to hopefully provide coaching opportunities for staff as often as we can. And I think I've mentioned that the best systems in the world focus a lot of attention on coaching. And, I see this as an opportunity for coaching to be provided. And the goal is to focus on one of our schools. And I think one of the reasons why you see so many members of the BF Norton staff is because they're going to be the major benefit of the thinking behind the use of this money. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Damana.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you to the familiar faces in the crowd. My BF Norton entourage. Microphone went dead. Thank you. So my BF Norton entourage here, thank you for coming. It shows your support for the students and your commitment to the school. So thank you for being here this evening. The last time we were here, or I was in this chair, I gave a presentation on our park results, and Councilor Bolio came and made some comments, and she said that she was excited to hear about some of the things that we had planned for closing achievement gaps in our town. So, Councilor Bolio, here we go. Here's an idea. As Superintendent Mitchell mentioned, I am also joined by Principal Sarah, Dr. Gaudreau, and Dr. Christie. They're very special people. I have been affiliated with Dr. Gaudreau dating back to my time at Times Square Academy. So it's been over a decade. I'm a lot older now. And so I'm going to try to attempt to create a context for the larger vision from which this grant was born. And then and we'll share the actual small step that we're taking or trying to take towards that larger vision. Okay, so Mike, is there a presentation that Cindy shared on the drive? Okay, all right, no problem. So you may have something on the drive there that's called Research Practice Partnership. And what essentially we're trying to do is to establish just that, a research practice partnership with Rhode Island College. And the larger vision back when we were at Times Squared was Ann and I started to talk about how we could link the expertise of researchers, professors at institutions of higher learning, and take that expertise and bring it to an inner city public school and use that to help us improve practice and hopefully improve student achievement. So that's the larger scope and vision. And there we go. If we go to the one before that, yep. So we provided the definition of what a research practice partnership is, and it's basically in place to strengthen educational systems where we can bring these entities together. And it was actually Ann's idea for us to use BF Norton as that particular school. So we can go to the next slide. So could we work with Rhode Island College leadership to create an ecosystem where practice, coaching, modeling, and theory come together to impact these things? Pre-service teacher development. So teachers that are in Dr. Gaudreau and Dr. Christie's classes who are educators in practice, they would benefit from this experience, and Ann will get into some details about that. Professional development. One key element of this is our teachers at BF Norton are going to receive direct professional development from Dr. Gaudreau and Dr. Christie, which is an added professional development experience and opportunity for them over and above what they receive here at the district level. And hopefully if we can combine those things, we can start to track some data and see if we can start to close gaps. And the larger vision really is about, in my view, BF Norton and McCourt eventually, if we can scale these grants to size. And again, Dr. Gaudreau will talk a little bit more about that. If you could, Mike, cue the next slide. So the guiding question, I always like to start things with a guiding question, is can we create a focused public school, not an autonomous school, but a focused school, rooted in research based on the link between effective teaching practices, professional development, and student achievement? So with that, I will hand the microphone over to Ann.
Hi, very nice to be here tonight. A little nervous though. We have thought about this as a tiered approach so that the expertise of the teachers at BF Norton, who have worked with my students in practicum for a number of semesters now, and Donna Christie and I have done some projects at BF Norton together too, so Donna's a familiar face there as well. We want to eventually be able to integrate their coursework more closely with their clinical practice at BF Norton. We are there now for 6 weeks, once a week for an hour each time. And the support the teachers have given my students has been tremendous. I'm already seeing improvements. You know, they're just learning. They're not student teaching yet, but they're learning how to work with the children, to ask good questions about their mathematical thinking, to plan appropriate standards-based lessons for them, and they're doing that with the guidance of the teachers and me. And so we're a really good team. We wanted to build on that and take that further. And as part of this ecosystem, the grant affords us the opportunity to provide a course on site for all of the teachers and the teacher assistants, since they are directly involved with supporting student learning as well. And it will be tied to the Common Core, and so that we can integrate the Common Core and the mathematical practices more fully. Also, we will have a math leadership team that will meet monthly, and a teacher from each grade level will be part of that team, because I think it's we all believe it's very important for the teachers to be invested in this work as well. And I believe they are, but their voices need to be heard as we make plans and move forward. The grant lasts till December of 2018. So we have a fair amount of time to make some constructive progress and support the children in their learning, further support Rick's students as they work on becoming teachers, because they're going to be the next generation of teachers entering our schools. And so it's in our best interest to make sure that we provide quality experiences for them as well. So that's basically what we plan to do. We hope to follow up with additional grant money to make this sustainable and to expand it to other schools within the Cumberland system. I've been at BF Norton for a number of years now. I knew Tony at Times Square, as he said, but I also had practicum there when Paula Maloney was principal, and then Tony, and now Dina. And I have to say, it's a very welcoming school with a young faculty that's very dedicated. And I think it's the perfect place to have this kind of a project. They have a lot to offer, and we're a good team. So I am just thrilled. Donna's thrilled. We're very excited about this. So, sure.
So I have a larger, more detailed presentation that I can share at some point at Achievement if you'd like me to. But there's one thing that I didn't add in the larger context of the vision. The larger context of the vision was to really create a true K-12 sort of pathway that's overseen by researchers like Dr. Christie and Dr. Gaudreau that would help students that attend schools like BF Norton and McCourt Middle School to have sort of an automatic acceptance to Rhode Island College. Right? That's the ultimate goal. Now, are we there yet? No. Have we established that partnership to that scale yet? No. But that is the larger vision. I tend to think big and then scale myself back. So we are at step one.
We're putting our toes in the water now.
Excellent. Mr. D'Amato, walk me through exactly the grant on what the funds are used for. And
I'm going to hand the mic to Dr. Gaudreau because the grant actually sits with Rhode Island College.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Christie and I each get one course release each semester. So that's part of the funding. So we get release time to be able to work on site in the classrooms with the teachers and the children. And that to me is very exciting. I really enjoy being in the classrooms at BF. Another piece is money to pay stipends for the teachers to take the class. So we will pay them for attending a course with us. And they will also, the materials that we need for the course come out of that money. The third piece is a consultant to help us work with English language learners and support them in learning mathematics well, in meeting their needs. So that pretty much covers it. Can you think of anything else? Oh, and then we have, as part of the grant, we had to have an outside evaluator, and that person will evaluate the project. We have a pre and a post assessment tool that we'll use that was developed at the University of Michigan by Dr. Deborah Ball, who's the Dean of Education, and she's very, very well known in mathematics education research. So we hope to see some growth in teachers' understanding of the Common Core, their content knowledge, and the approaches they use to teach children. And in that, in turn, will help us help the children and create excellent placements for future teachers.
Awesome. How long is the program going on for?
Till December of 2018.
Oh, okay. Wow. Excellent. Mrs. Fogel? Oh, please, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Fogel, hang on one second. Mr. DeMonica. I apologize.
Dr. Boudreau, is it the goal of Rick to maybe, when the students need to do their student teaching from your college, go to BF or into Cumberland schools and bring that with them?
Absolutely. And I know that there are things that I don't know about, well, that I'm not as well versed in, like blended learning. And I need the support of the Cumberland teachers to help me do that, because that's not something that I can teach out of context, right? And we really need to be in a classroom setting to see how that works. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right, thank you.
We actually have five RIC students coming to us in January as of right now, and those student teaching placements did really come out of this work as well. So
Right, we had a meeting with the Office of Planning and Placements, and we had a meeting at RIC, and the woman from the Office of Planning and Placements was part of that when we were talking about this idea for the grant. And she has placed some really nice students who are there. Some of them are doing practicum now. There, who will be student teaching in the spring at BF.
I think we might have close to 9 in practicum and then 5 coming in January. And Dr. Goudreau was also able to connect us with the right people at Rhode Island College so that our grade 5 students could have a college visit this fall. I had been searching for a college to be able to welcome our students onto campus for the last year and a half. And it was Dr. Goudreau who was able to make that happen for us. So in late September, our entire 5th grade visited and spent pretty much 3/4 of a day at Rhode Island College.
We have a program there called Learning for Life. And rather than having an admissions tour, which really wasn't geared toward 5th graders, the Office of Learning for Life, a young woman who works there, designed a tour that would be appropriate for the students. And there was a lot going on campus that day, so I think they had a good time.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, anything else to add? Oh, yeah.
Just before the picture, we know that meaningful and focused collaboration, there is a strong correlation between, collaboration of like-minded professionals and the impact on student performance. So not only is it important for our teachers, our educators to collaborate with one another, but having an opportunity to collaborate with a college is a wonderful thing. So we're really excited and we really appreciate the opportunity to work with the two of you moving forward. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. D'Amato, too, for your work on this. Mrs. Sarah, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Friedman.
I just want to say that this is very, very impressive, and I love the idea of how BF Norton teachers will learn from Rhode Island College, but also Rhode Island College is going to learn from BF Norton teachers. And I just think that back and forth collaboration, and we've been talking about blended learning on the achievement subcommittee and the importance of that, and being able to integrate all of this together and to see the excitement of all of you sitting there is awesome. So I can't wait to see and hear more about the results of all of this. So good luck and congratulations to all of you.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One thing is that at RIC, one of my positions is to coordinate a 5-course mathematics program for K-8 teachers. It's called the Math for Elementary School Teachers Certificate of Graduate Studies program. So I'm constantly working in the classroom with teachers from grades K-8, which I have such a passion for. I love doing it. I love the BF Norton School and the teachers there, from the past. And I'm personally really excited. I work in 2 worlds at RIC. I have a joint appointment in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, so my home base is mathematics. And I also have an appointment in the School of Education. So I bridge both worlds, content as well as pedagogical content knowledge. And I did want to mention all the work I do with Ann, we go back many years, and Assistant Superintendent D'Amato, I met him at Times Square as well. But I also wanted to say I have another writing partner, and she's one of the middle school teachers at North Cumberland Middle School, Christine Payson. And she was a former student of mine at Rhode Island College, and she and I are giving a workshop in a couple of weeks to teachers for the Association of Teachers of Mathematics for New England. And together we've got several
publication. So I love her, and I know she's a beloved teacher at Cumberland, and I'm just thrilled to be part of this district in this way. So I'm really honored and looking forward to working with the teachers. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. My daughter is attending first year college at Rhode Island College. So yeah, she loves it. In education, early childhood education. So, thank you. I knew you were going to say that. No, right. I was nervous if you had any other response other than that. I'm just kidding. All right, Mrs. Fogel, now we can do the picture.
Yeah, so.
All right, moving on. Next item on the agenda, discussion and/or vote to approve the second reading of new policy I-9 Internet Filtering Policy. Pleasure of the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve. It's gone through Mr. Fiorillo's committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve the I-9 Internet Filtering Policy. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorillo. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is personnel recommendations. Mrs. Fogel.
Good evening. I only have one for you this evening. So I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the retirement of Janet Maelli, secondary chemistry teacher at Cumberland High School. This will be effective August 20th of 2018, and she's been with us for 11 years. She's taught many more years, but she's been with Cumberland for 11 years.
Pleasure of the committee. Mr. Fiorillo makes a motion to accept the retirement of Janet
Maelli.
Maelli. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Hess. All in favor? Ayes have it, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Mr. Mitchell, do we have executive session?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize, I skipped right over that. School committee comments. School liaison reports. Pleasure of the committee. Okay, nothing. Mrs. Bolio, would you like to step up to the microphone? We know it's not public comment, but I'm going to be respectful.
It's not on the agenda, and I
Okay,
apologize.
Mrs. Bolio, unless Mr.
Former
Adams throwing a water bottle at me, we're going to let you speak.
We'll call it former school committee comments. I just want to say congratulations to BF Norton. That's a $200,000 grant. $201,000 grant is incredible. So hats off to you.
Excellent.
Nice job. Nice work. It's great to hear that there's always that pursuit of closing the achievement gap for students. And as a parent and as a kid who grew up in a family where college was definitely going to be a reach, having that potential star for those kids, you know, I think would make any parent just so hopeful that there's a possibility for their children throughout their educational experience in Cumberland. So congratulations. I look forward to hearing a whole lot more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bolio. Rep, would you like to say something? Rep, yeah, we have no we passed, already went by public comment, But I have no problem with you coming up to speak to us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the administration, I'm very proud tonight. BF Norton is my district, and their accomplishments working in the future with URI, it's phenomenal. What I came here tonight, I was reminded I haven't been here in a while, and I look forward to working with all of you this upcoming year on all the issues, in reference to finances and where Cumberland's, going. So I look for your recommendations, and I just want to thank you. There are a few issues I'd like to just. I wrote down a few talking points in reference to. I heard early on the school busing.
Yes.
Doing busing, Mr. Neves. I passed a bill 2 years ago in reference to pre-registrations, voluntary, on the school districts. I'd like to get some input on that in reference to, Cumberland's actually looked at that and made any decisions. Also, last year at the General Assembly, we actually a bill was passed to put minibuses in service, throughout the state. That's another conversation, we need to have, with their own bus and their availabilities. And third, it's someone mentioned tonight about the upcoming projects, which I've been deeply involved in a structure. Basically, we're going to have new water lines throughout the town, and it's quite a project on Diamond Hill, going from the police station all the way up 295, Chapel Four Corners, which is going to have distractions. But it's Marshall Avenue too. I just got word last night. The state approved my Marshall Avenue plan, and they're basically going to pay for the whole thing at a savings probably of $1 million. So, but the concerns I heard here tonight in reference to the school busing, the late busing problems, so on and so forth. I'd like to work with you people, and that needs to be a joint effort.
Rep, can you get us a couple RIPTA buses to come down and fill in?
I was on the phone today, believe it or not, with Department of Transportation, and they basically, I was looking for surplus vehicles, for the town. But I am concerned about the traffic flow, coming up at 19.
Mendon Road.
Mendon Road, Diamond Hill. If we're having a late problem now, so we need to look at this problem along with the police and town officials, so that our students are secured, get to school on time. With that said, I look forward to
Rep. Since they're doing all that work on Diamond Hill Road with
Yes.
water lines, that might be a perfect time to have some sidewalks put into our town.
I'm also striving for that. What's actually going on with the implementation of the new water lines, which I requested that they be dropped in first, okay? And the state will come along and do the overlay. This is from the police station, actually all the way up to Nate Whipple Highway. That in itself is going to be a savings of $1.2 million just on the overlay and sewers and drains. So there's a lot going on, but I look forward to working with all of you. And
So I really like that you made time in your busy schedule to show up to our school committee meeting. And I would like to put you on once a month on our agenda, and you can give us an update as it's related to schools in the state.
I'd consider it an honor, okay? And
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. DeMonica.
I would just like to point out that, was it 4 to 6 weeks ago, I asked about getting crosswalk painted over the new entrance to Tucker Field, and I wasn't following
Yes.
protocol. I called Mr. Jim McLaughlin here, and he made the phone call right away to the state about having that looked at. So much for protocol.
And
Yes.
in reference to the crosswalk that's been going back and forth, there are they said 3 crosswalks, but what I would recommend is putting in a waiver, okay?
Say it again, putting in a waiver?
Yes, in other words, the state would have to relook at this.
Okay.
On a crosswalk. I mean, common sense, Thomas Paine, you've got one behind the bridge, and I actually think the location which was recommended, is duly needed. So, if you'd like more information on it, I'd be more than happy to share it with you. My dispatches from DOT. Okay.
Rep, I'll be reaching out to you within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Hey. There we go. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Fiorillo makes a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Hess. All in favor? Against? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.